Hi, and welcome to the Turning Stone Show, where we discuss topics that matter to you about spiritual consciousness evolving. We're excited to be with you today on location in Scottsdale, Arizona, at the annual West Coast Conference of the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies. I'm David Marsh, and here with me today is Jesse Farrell and special guest Dr. Alan Hugenot. He has a Doctorate of Science in Mechanical Engineering and is the International President of the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies. Now, in his first book, The Death Experience, What It's Like When You Die, he talks about his motorcycle accident in the early 1970s and the events that transpired that led him to his study of consciousness. His second book has recently been released, and it's called The New Science of Consciousness Survival and the Meta-Paradigm Shift to a Conscious Universe. He takes an overall look at quantum electrodynamics and how current modern science is disproving classical Newtonian physics. This is the first book written by someone who is both a medium and a scientist. He has integrated science and spirituality in a way that you can learn and understand. Now, there's no question who the smartest guy in the room is, Dr. Alan Hugenot. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you very much, David. Glad to be here.
So, we started a conference today where you talked about quantum electrodynamics, and you made some very interesting points. To give some context, you've got a complete book about your motorcycle accident, your near-death experience. Just for a few minutes, give a little context of that. I know when you wake up from a near-death experience in a hospital in the early 70s and you tell the doctors, hey, guess what? There's the afterlife. It's real. I've been there. Let me tell you about it. I imagine they weren't quite receptive to that.
No, they weren't exactly receptive. In fact, in those days, we still had the nut houses. That's what I call them.
Yeah.
They were still open. Reagan hadn't closed them down in 1981, so this was before that. And psychiatrists had the ability to commit anyone, anytime, for being delusional. And they felt at that time their official policy was if you said that you had been to the other side and you'd come back, you were obviously delusional because nobody's Jesus. We don't know to die and come back.
Yeah.
And so I came back after having, I was in a coma for 12 hours. And I went to the other side. I had an experience with a light. I came back. The light said, it's not your time. You have to go back. Came back into the body. And then I wanted to tell everybody about it. And the psychiatrist, of course, wanted to put me in the nut house. And what they said was, what I said to him was, look, I've been to Mexico. You haven't. You're telling me Mexico doesn't exist. And of course, that didn't set too well with the psychiatrist. So my orthopedic surgeon checked me out of the hospital 5 days early. I'm suddenly sitting there, and he comes running in, grabs me, puts me in a wheelchair, throws my clothes in my lap, takes me down the elevator, out the back door, and my mother's got the car running, and we leave town.
Wow.
And I did not get committed to the insane asylum.
Wow.
Now, today, they want me to talk about it. And that's come a long way because Moody wrote his book in 1975 and coined the term near-death experience, and they began to study it. And we have all these organizations that now study it. But in those days, I had to close it all back in. I was a physics student in college, and I had to go back to college, study physics, do the Newtonian thing. Been a naval architect, marine engineer all my life, designing ships, and doing all that stuff on that side, but knowing that we had the other side.
Yeah.
And now it's so popular, they just pay me to come talk.
It's awesome. It's awesome. One thing I really liked about your bio that I read on your website is it talked about how you were a classically trained physicist, and so you're studying the Newtonian principles. You're also a faith-based person. You're in a church Christian system. And that really resonates with me because I was raised in a church tradition that let me know that I'm separate from the divine and I must be good enough to be with the divine and have a substitutionary atonement. So that really resonated that you had that experience. And because you're also a near-death survivor, you had a new paradigm of that whole thing. Kind of give some context to how the religious context. Can I maybe start there?
I came home from the hospital thinking, oh, good, I escaped the psychiatrist, so I'll go talk to the pastor. And I said, Pastor, I have to tell you what happened. And he said, so tell me. And so I told him, I've been to the other side, I've come back, the afterlife is real. He said, couldn't have happened, it doesn't agree with Scripture. End of story. Couldn't have happened, doesn't agree with Scripture. I said, no, it doesn't agree with your interpretation of Scripture.
Yeah.
It's real, it's what I did. Well, of course, he didn't want to hear me either. Nobody wanted to hear in those days. So you close up, you shut up, and you wait. Yeah. but now it's 46 years later, and it's a very popular topic. Everybody wants to know about it. Consciousness is real. And so we now can actually publish on this stuff. And I moved into being a medium 10 years ago. As I reached retirement, I said, okay, now I can take the time and I can open up and I can study mediumship, because I've always had that emphatic ability to know what everybody's doing and feeling and going on all around me. Mm-hmm. And ever since the near-death experience, I've had that ability. And so I decided, okay, I'll study how this is, because I knew that life on the other side exists, and if those people are over there, we must be able to talk to them. Yeah. That's how I got into that.
Yeah. So you don't have a fear-based system. You don't have retribution. You get punished for the bad things and rewarded for the good things.
What we understand on the other side is that, first off, the church hates this, I'm going to say. Eternal life is everybody's. Mm-hmm. It belongs to everyone. You don't earn it. It's like St. Paul says in Ephesians. He says, eternal life is not earned or deserved. Mm-hmm. It's the free gift of God. Okay, what's Paul trying to tell us? He's trying to tell everybody, you already got it. Nuts with this, you have to earn it stuff. Yeah. That's all created by the church and by the politicians in order to keep the thumb on the people. It was the kings and Justinian, actually, who really wanted to keep the thumb on them. And so that was created back in 553 AD by Justinian. You can only have one life, you can't have multiple lifetimes, and you can't do anything except kiss up to the church. Yeah.
The infinitesimally small billionth of a blink of an eye in eternity that this human experience is. What if I miss it? What if people, they live in such fear. And that's one thing that I've had to really come out of. And near-death experiences, reading about them, studying them on the internet, and just delving into that is what really set my mind free. People like yourself, they said, hey, I went to the other side. God's not this mean guy that's a cosmic judge going to determine if you're in or you're out. Jesus wasn't an evacuation plan. So I really appreciated that perspective that you had.
Well, when the church says to you, it is appointed unto a man but once to die, and after that the judgment, they're talking about what the near-death experiences call the life review. When you get to the other side, you do a life review. The life review is not a judgment. It's you that's passing judgment on what you did. Yeah. And in the life review, you're seeing what everyone else felt in every action that you took when you were angry or you had anything, and what happens to the other person. And when you understand that we're all one, that other person is you. And so you're reviewing all that and you're looking at it. And the question that the light asks you is, was it enough? Have you had enough? And the question he's asking is the same one that way back in Egyptian history, they have this beautiful picture, the weighing of the heart. And the goddess Mat, the goddess of righteousness, is weighing the heart of the recently deceased individual. And she's asking the question, is your heart heavy? Have you had enough? Is it still enough for you? If it's not, in the Egyptian theory, you'll go down through the underworld and come back and live another life till you can get your heart as light as a feather. But if it's already as light as a feather, you've done all this, then you'll go to the stars and live with Osiris. And right at the side of that balance is this little monkey, and his name is Horus. He's the son of Osiris and Isis. He's the son of God, virgin birth, and he's tilting the balance in your favor. He's Jesus, tilting the balance in your favor. And when you look at this ancient little thing, you realize that all our religions are based on the ancient Egyptian religion from 6,000 years ago. Yeah. The only difference between that was no second lifetimes and no way to repent without going through the church. Yeah. The church will say yes or no, you're forgiven, you're not forgiven, and all of that. And that's how they have their power. So most churches can't stand us when we talk about these things, that consciousness survival is for everybody, because they have nothing to sell any longer.
Yeah. The convenient way to get out of that was it was of the devil, and you're being influenced by demons.
Yes.
And if you're channeling a medium, it's a familiar spirit. There's a demon that knows all. And they just paint this awful, scary picture of an evil entity, and it's always the tribal war, God versus the devil.
And there's no such thing.
Yeah.
The universe is made out of consciousness, as Max Planck said in 1900. The universe, the matrix of matter is consciousness, mind, and the mind, the consciousness, is based on love. And Jesus comes along and says, God is love. Love is what the universe is made out of. And when you get there and you visit with the other side, it's like you're home. You're there with love. You're there with the light. You're part of that light. You've known that light for thousands of years. You're just back. And when they tell the near-death experiencer, you have to go back to the earth for a little more living, all of the near-death experiencers say, no, I don't want to go there. I want to stay here. I mean, this is fine. I'm home. I don't want to go back. But we come back and we hang out here until we're done.
So you mentioned in that experience of where you're, what did you call it, where you're looking at your whole, everything that you've done.
The life review.
The life review, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're seeing the impact of all of your choices, decisions, emotions that have on the other people. And then at some point you start to see that connection, you said, between everyone. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what is that experience that you're having there?
Okay, the closest thing you're going to see to it is the movie called Defending Your Life. And it's Meryl Streep and I forgot his name.
Oh, yeah.
Defending Your Life. Go watch that.
Oh, I haven't seen it. That's good.
Go watch the movie Defending Your Life and you'll begin to see exactly what goes on. It's very close. That's written by somebody who's been there. Okay. And he gets off his bus and goes and gets on Merle's bus. It's kind of cute.
I remember that. It's very cute.
Okay,
That's funny.
but he's defending his life. He's sitting there and they're saying, so what did you do here? And what did you do there? And the life review is very much like that, only it goes by in 30 seconds and you see the whole thing. Time doesn't exist on that side.
Yeah.
So you just go really fast through it all. But that's a good depiction of it in Defending Your Life.
And then from that, then that's kind of the way of the scale. You're like, okay, no, my heart's not light enough.
Yeah,
you were talking about.
They're talking about from way back 7,000-8,000 years ago. They're talking about this weighing of the heart, and it's always been that way. And that's one of the appendices in the back of this book is the weighing of the heart, and they talk about that picture. In fact, I should just show it to you while I was talking about it. There's the picture.
Yeah.
That's the picture I was talking about. And she's weighing your heart. And see Horus there? The Son of God tilting it in your favor. If that's not Jesus Christ, the Son of God tilting in your favor, I don't know what that is.
I even see a cross on that scale too.
Yeah, you see it. It's all there,
Yeah.
And that's the Egyptian religion from 8,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So when the church says, oh, we have this new religion called Christianity, then there's another quote in here by St. Augustine where St. Augustine says the original religion, which is now called Christianity, was the ancient religion from the beginning of time, and we just changed it to that after Christ came. Yeah. He says that. St. Augustine says that and have it signed off by the Catholic Church. Is exactly what he said.
Wow.
Coming up, Dr. Hugenot talks about letting go of your fear and raising consciousness on The Turning Stone Show.
I was diagnosed as a 41-year-old married man with end-stage AIDS. I passed away in the intensive care unit of Fletcher Allen Hospital in Burlington, Vermont, for what seemed like 20 seconds. But for me, it seemed like eternity. There was a light, and it grew and grew. It was pure white. And it would be 2 years later to realize what happened was actually a near-death experience. This isn't about rationalizing your mistakes. It's about getting the hell up and doing something with it.
So you have a great business and you're ready to shout it to the world and start your marketing campaign, letting everybody know just how awesome you are. You're looking for some great marketing that will get your business some exposure and create a real bang in your industry. I'm talking about a well-designed video that captures the what and the how of what you do. We help you capture your business. AZ Video Marketing.
Turning Stone Show. Spiritual consciousness evolving.
So we lay down our fear, the
Yes.
fear-based religion of I've got to be good enough. If we lay that down, it allows us to be open, to be able to say, well, maybe there is more to this life. And once you become open to that, you have the opportunity to raise consciousness.
You can raise your consciousness and you can realize that we're all going to have eternal life.
Yeah.
And when you tell someone you're not going to be dead when you're dead, they'll say, what are you saying? And you just keep telling them, you're not going to be dead.
Yeah.
Death is like taking off a jacket and leaving it behind and you're still there.
Yeah.
And that's the best description I can give you. You just throw the body away and you're still there. And people say, well, do you look like this? Well, what do you want to look like? And mostly you look like an energy center.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you want to recognize the other energy center, you can fabricate. This is me, there's David, and this is what we look like. You can go back to being an energy center. It's not at all, it's very hard to describe in terms that we can understand in this life. And if you've ever read the book Flatland, it's a book written in the 1880s. It's talking about people live in 2 dimensions, trying to understand 3 dimensions. If you live in 2 flat dimensions in Flatland, and a sphere was to pass through your thing, you'd see a little spot to grow into a big circle, and then go back down into a little, and the spot disappear again, because you don't realize that everything isn't these 2 lines. You can step over the line to the next place because you don't have 3D. You only got 2D. And they live in a 2D world. Well, he's trying to illustrate how hard it is for us in 3D to understand 4D, 5D, and 6D, which are out there, and which string theory postulates that we have 8 more dimensions. And if you understand physics and you're really working at this level, you shortly come to realize that Schrodinger and Heisenberg and Pauli and all these guys were into Hindu religions and consciousness and all this kind of thing. And why? Because they knew what Max Planck had said. The matrix of matter is mind. The universe is conscious. That's really what he was saying. And that's the guy who gave us the quanta. And these are the guys who gave us quantum electrodynamics. It's very interesting to me always that the materialists want to call it quantum mechanics. They want to turn quantum electrodynamics into something that sounds material, that it's mechanics. It's not material. It is totally outside of material.
Now, I was taught at the very fundamental levels, everything that exists is made out of matter, and matter is hard, and and there's electrons, and it spins in a nice circle, and all of that. And now we've seen the double slit experiment where the the act of observing the electron changes what it does because there's a consciousness associated. You showed a wonderful video that Dr. Q animated.
Dr. Quantum.
Dr.
Quantum. And that's Fred Alan Wolf created that video in the late 90s. He's a physicist in Berkeley, California. And we use it a lot because it so it eloquently explains at level everyone can understand how the wave turns into a particle or turns back into a wave as needed. And the wave function is Schrodinger's wave function, which is the potentiality that everything has to become something that's out here. And that as John Newman says, you have to have choice one, which makes the decision of what it will become. And he shows so beautifully how these photons go in through the 2 slots, and the photon sees that you're watching, it decides to be a particle. And if you're not watching, it remains a wave going through the 2 slots. And so it's a really fun cartoon to watch called Dr. Quantum. It takes 5 minutes, but it explains to everybody exactly how we know that the universe is conscious. Physics requires a conscious observer outside of 3D plus time, the Newtonian box that we live in, to observe the wave function, to collapse it. And that's what most people don't get, but our Nobel laureate physicists all got it because they've got all this stuff put together at some high level. But most of us are just people, and we're not physicists, and we need to understand it. And so that's what I try to do with the book, is explain in here how materialism is based on 12 basic first principles, all of which were assumed 350 years ago to be self-evident. Little things like reality. This is really here, except it's not really here. It's just a field. And quantum field theory has showed us that my field won't go through that field. Okay, we get that. But it's just a field. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. I'm just a bunch of, field. And so quantum electrodynamics takes out all of those first principles, the 6 of them, on which materialism is based. And we've known about this since it completely put together its theory since 1934. So at least 80 years we've done this, 90 years. We've known exactly that materialism is false science. It's junk science. And yet it's still taught by all the materialists who want to know that reality is real. I can sit in my chair and it's not going to fall apart from me sitting on it. It's really here. Well, It's not really here. It's a field.
Yeah.
And we know that everything that we're looking at, space and time, are actually illusions that we use to see this reality. They talk about the Big Bang, and they say there was a singularity, and all of a sudden it went bang, and it spread out and became, well, what was here 2 weeks before the Big Bang?
Oh, that's so good.
The singularity just thought that it got bigger.
Yeah.
There was no bang, there was nothing. The Big Bang never happened. But that's the best solution they can give you is well,
awesome.
It all just started from the Big Bang. If that's not a religious viewpoint, what is that?
I know. There's so much faith that you have to have.
You
even
have
to be an atheist.
Even to be an atheist,
Yeah.
you have to have faith in the Big Bang. No, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, so there it is. And then when somebody says, I'm an atheist, I'm a materialist, I believe, he's saying, I have my belief system as a materialist. And what is a belief system? It's BS.
That's so good.
So we have the Baptist BS, we have the Muslim BS,
Yeah.
we have the Methodist BS, we have the Hindu BS, and we have the materialist science BS. But what's the truth? And as a scientist, you have to look at what do we know, and you have to look at the science that we have, and you have to go into places, and you have to look at what do mediums do, and you have to do the science of looking at what those mediums do. And I'm looking up a picture here in my book just for the fun of it. This is me working as a medium at the Noetic Society, and they got my head wired up. And what they're doing is checking what I'm doing as a medium, and we do lots of research on this. And these are what we do. We generate this with the EEG that we're doing on my head, and it tells us lots of things, where the energy's coming in and all that. You can look in the book and see that. But what I'm talking about is I've been tested at 3 different laboratories in this country of what I'm doing with mediumship, 10 years into the study of it. You don't do this. Mediumship is not something you start one day and, I'm going to be medium. It's like concert piano. And I go to Arthur Findlay College over in England and I study it. And I'll be doing next week a seminar with a bunch of other mediums in Orlando starting on Sunday night. We sharpen our abilities at this so that we can sit there, and when I talk with someone, if I was working with you, and if you had a deceased relative that I was looking for, I would bring you their name, then I'd tell you how they died, and then I would tell you their relationship to you, and I'd tell you all these things, because I tell the spirits ahead of time, I won't bring your message through unless you tell me your name, your relationship, how you died, all of that, and so they come from the other side, and they tell me this, and I feel it. I feel a name, and then I tell you the name that your grandfather had this name and so forth, and that's who he was. And that's how we do this. When I do that, or when other mediums that are evidential mediums do that, we can bring in everybody's name, all your relatives, everyone around you. How do I do that? I've done it sometimes where I have, as a scientist, I'm up there, I'm standing in front of a spiritualist church, and I'll bring through 5 different deceased entities for 3 different people that are there, their relatives, the names, who they are, and everything. And I run the numbers on it, and it's 3 billion to 1 that I could ever guess all of that, and yet it just comes right through me. Well, the only explanation we mediums have for that is that they're talking to us. They're putting it in our ear. They're right there talking to us. Science says, boy, that doesn't sound very good. Are you sure about that? Well, that's what it sounds like to us. And I know, put a number on it, 50, 60, 70, 100, I don't know how many mediums I know that do this, that I know, I'd have to make a list. And we do this. Now, there are fake mediums who say, I got your grandma here, she's got gray hair and she had glasses before she died. Most grandmas have glasses and gray hair before they die. But when they've really got evidence, the name, what they died of, it was a heart attack or it was breast cancer or it was pleurisy, and they tell you these things, then you say, okay, there's real evidence. They're obviously, and they don't know if you've met them, they've never met you, and they bring in your relative and tell you this stuff, they're real. If the medium it doesn't bring you that kind of evidence, don't have anything to do with them, don't pay them anything, don't be involved. I have never made money being a medium. I don't charge for readings. I just do it because I'm a scientist studying mediumship.
Coming up, Dr. Hugenot talks about mediumship and channeling Helen on The Turning Stone Show.
Hi, I'm Jesse.
Here's what you need to know about Chinese cupping. It's a great way to just tweak your body just enough to get increased performance, but also to release some of those areas of your body that you don't even realize are painful. And cupping and acupuncture are often used together, but it's an effective way to bring blood flow to a particular area of the body so it aids in rapid healing.
Welcome to Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. Holistic health offers so many positive possibilities. Feeling better inside and out, finding peace and serenity, energizing or relaxing yourself with massage, yoga, holistic nutrition, and many practices that support wellness and harmony of the mind, body, and spirit. Southwest Institute of Healing Arts is an award-winning, nationally accredited private college and community healing center for holistic healthcare careers and continuing education.
Turning Stone Show. Spiritual consciousness evolving.
The humor that you shared about Helen today was amazing. Here's a woman you've never met, but you have a unique relationship with her.
Okay, so my chief person on the other side, and you have to understand, we're on this side, and for you to talk to that side, you go to a medium. Okay, so your grandmother's over there, and she's never had done anything like a medium, so she wants to talk to you. She has to find a medium on that side so she can talk to you.
Wow.
So my mother-in-law, the mother of my wife, who died 5 years before I met her daughter, just started coming to me because I was talking to her about a particular building she designed and why they did things and so forth. And we began to talk. And as I studied mediumship and got more into it, she would come to me and tell me things. So I went to mediums, and every time I go to a medium, here would be Helen, that's her name. She might come as Dorothy, which is her middle name, to fool the medium if the medium had ever heard of Helen. She'll do this thing. But like at Arthur Findlay College, the first time I was there, I'm there, and Helen came through. At Arthur Findlay, we give readings to each other all day long. That's what we do. And the first 8 readings, she was there 5 out of 8. And I had to say, Helen, honestly, I need to talk to my mother and my grandfather and my uncles. Would you stop? And so I didn't hear from Helen for a day and a half. She just got in a snit and went off. And then she finally started coming back. And so the relationship we have across this divide, and remember, this is a woman I never met in this life. But when she sees me, she says, Alan, my joy, my love, my dear, my glory, she's got all these little pet names for me. And she comes through these other people, and it's apparent that I've known her for a very long time, whether I was the girl and she was the guy or what. This goes back for a long time. And probably previous lifetimes. If that's true, we're working on the reincarnation thing and we're studying that. But it's apparent to me that I've known Helen for a very long time and that she showed up, and she I have all kinds of evidence and I can tell all kinds of stories. But here's the thing. I'm having a relationship with somebody I never met on the other side of the veil, and it's a fun relationship. And she honestly comes to me every morning at 3 o'clock, and I get up at 3 a.m. At 3 a.m. we have a talk, and I get out one of my journals and I start writing, and Helen starts telling me stuff. And this is how I get information for the Soul Phone Project for Gary Swartz and other things. I get the information from Helen from the other side. And so if somebody wants to talk to me, and it could be your grandma or your grandfather or somebody else, or it could be Max Planck, or it could be James Clerk Maxwell, or it could be David Bohm. One of these people wants to talk and bring something through to us. If they go to Helen, Helen knows me so well from so many relationships that Helen knows my heart inside out. And she can just put a name into me, somebody's name, so that I feel the name, and then I say the name. And here's an example. I'm my very first time on the platform making a reading for somebody in the room, and I've got this woman there, and I've got her boyfriend, and I'm telling this guy that's standing right beside you, and he's got curly black hair, and he'd like to grow his beard and shave it off and grow it again. And then he passed on, and he loves you very much. He wants to tell you he loves you very much, but he's not your brother. He's more like he must be she says, he's my fiance. I said, okay, that's who he is. And he had something to do with basketball. She had said, it has nothing to do with basketballs. I said, oh, Okay. So I said to Helen later, what was that with the basketballs? And she says, well, the only professional basketball player, is Jack Sigma of the Seattle Sonics. And the guy's name was Jacques, and I just trying to get you to say Jack. And I said, oh, thanks, Helen. And so I went to the woman the next week and said, what was his name? And she said, Jacques. And I said, there it is. And that's how Helen works through me.
Yeah.
She knows what can trigger me to say something, and she was trying to get me to say Jack. And instead I said basketballs. And so you learn over time to deal with your medium on the other side. She's the medium on that side, I'm the medium on this side. So we can communicate. And so it's like as if you thought about her field and my field, and we're just like this, or trying to get it completely so that, when you hear a medium like Suzanne this morning, Suzanne talks to Susan, and they're like this. That's her daughter-in-law, or her stepdaughter.
Yeah.
And that's who talks to her, and so that's how we do that. They just put it into us. And so if
go ahead.
If your grandfather's over there trying to talk to me, he's going to come to her, and she's going to interpret it into symbols that are going to make some kind of meaning to me that I'm going to tell to you.
So as a medium on this side, are you always only working with a medium on the other side?
No, you could be working with anybody or anything, but normally people on that side, especially deceased relatives that just passed, don't know how to do this, so they go get a medium who knows how to do this.
Okay.
And then they have their phone, and you have your phone. I'm just a telephone.
Yeah.
That's all I am, is the telephone.
Gotcha.
I'm just the channel that is coming through. But we learn how to release ourselves to that. So you see me, the scientist with the analytical mind. I have to set the analytical mind aside, and when I do that, then that's when I get all emotional, and I start to tear up, and then I'm a medium, and then I come back and know I'm going to be the scientist, so I come back to be the scientist, and it's two different personality situations. You have to be one or the other.
Yeah, you're raising consciousness through this. It's not a trick. It's not a, hey, look what I can do. There's nothing ostentatious about it. You're helping, and you're being of service, and you're raising people's consciousness.
That's exactly what I'm doing. That's why I don't take money for it.
Yeah.
So how do you? So there's been a lot of talk this weekend about love being the biggest thing, like what we're all striving for, the vibration, the consciousness. How does that work with? How does love itself and then consciousness? How do those work together? Are they separate, distinct, or?
Well, consciousness is what we realize in physics. How would a rock become conscious and become what we are? If we were just cold, dead rocks here in the universe, the rocks had to be conscious to begin with, so that we know they're held together with consciousness. The easiest way I like to see that is, you think about the quarks. We've now identified all the quarks. They actually do exist. And we talk about quarks, and they're held together by gluons. But just what are gluons? Well, we don't know. But they hold the quarks together. Well, the quarks are just pieces of thoughts, just pieces of consciousness. But what holds them together? Now, I'm going to say something very unscientific. Love holds them together, and that's what gluons are. Wow. And people who come back from the other side, like Nancy Bryan, she says, the whole place was made out of love. And that's what it is. Yeah. The gluons are held together by love. Why does the atom want to, we say, well, it has a negative charge and a positive charge, and the electrons going around like this. No, that's our explanation for it. What makes that charge want to be there?
So is there
love?
Is it like something tangible that you can measure or feel or see
on the other side?
Yeah. Like love itself.
Yeah, it's not something tangible you can see over on that side, but it's definitely something you can feel on that side.
Wasn't it like a field?
It's like a field.
Yeah.
Okay, I can explain this in another way. What we're working with at this moment is your heart makes a field that we haven't been able to measure. We have been able to measure the electromechanical field that your heart makes, and it's about 60 times stronger than the one that your brain makes. Yeah. Okay, but there's another field going on there that's in some other kind of dimension and some other frequency that we're not measuring. And I love from E.T., you have the heart light. Okay, so if you think about your heart creating some kind of emission that's a light, what the spirits are doing with the soul phone is they're reflecting that light. And unless we have that light going out, they can't reflect anything. So a skeptic comes in and says, this isn't, there's nothing coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, but the one who believes, who says, oh yeah, they're over there, I believe in them, I know my loved ones are over there, there's this huge bunch of stuff coming out of them, and that's how we bring the power together in a seance or something. We're all together, and this is coming out of us, and we make a circuit, and then the power gets more powerful. If you saw Sanaya last night, when Suzanne was bringing through Sanaya, she's saying, send me energy up here on the, and I bring this through. And that's how we do it. We work together in this energy thing. That light is what they reflect back. And we're working with optics to do the soul phone. We're working with optics, and that's how we do the soul phone.
Coming up, Dr. Hugenot talks about contacting people in the afterlife with the soul phone on The Turning Stone Show.
I'm a teacher and I'm a coach, and my purpose is to really help other people find their purpose and to not settle. Most of the time they're stuck and they want something more for themselves. I mean, what I do for them is I help them get clarity. I'm very grounded, like I have a calming energy for people. And I teach them how to listen to their intuition and get really quiet. We have to really listen to what the truth is within ourselves and trust it.
Turn Your Life Inside Out is a book of articulations. Each page is a completely separate topic. This book is a pocket guide of support and reminders to give you what you need just when you need it the most. If you're listening to this now, it's because you've already chosen to head your life in the direction of your greatest dreams. If you open this book to any random page, you'll notice it's not so random at all.
Turning Stone Show. Spiritual consciousness evolving.
On a future episode, we're going to have Dr. Gary Schwartz.
Yes.
We're actually going to go on location to his lab, and we're going to do a bunch of stuff. So Alan's talking about the soul phone, and this is going to be a collaborative project that he's working on. You're going to get more information about this in future episodes, so don't feel like you're don't feel like you're left out or lost. We're gonna get into that in depth. A light overview, maybe?
The soul phone is, it'll come out in its first iteration in about 2 to 3 years, and you'll see it as a text phone, and you can text Grandma and see what Grandma has to say on the other side. She's deceased and she's over there, and she'll text you back, okay? And you can say, well, how can I prove that's not just a hoax? Well, then ask Grandma some questions nobody would know, and she'll only give you the right answers. And then you say, well, I guess it really is Grandma, because there's real evidence. We're going to move beyond the fake medium, okay? And this is going to screw it up for a lot of fake mediums and frauds out there, because all of a sudden the soul phone will bypass them.
Yeah. So is this going to allow me to have a direct connection conversation, like say with my brother? It's not going to be going like me to like a medium to then to
right. It's
another medium.
You talking to your brother on the phone. Now, Gary believes it'll work for everybody. And I believe they got to have the heart light. So it's not going to work for a skeptic. So a skeptic will try to call Grandma, nothing will happen. Give the phone to a medium, the medium will try to call Grandma and go right through for it.
Well, today when I had my reading, I was in the other room while you guys were talking, and I was one of the demonstrators up front, and it was awesome. And my grandmother came through, and she verified everything, and it was good. And then she said, well, your grandmother has a message for you, and it's you need to slow down your driving and be more careful when you're driving, which is very accurate if anybody knows my driving. And then number two, she's like dancing around, she's all joyous, she's very thin, she's frail, and she's like, just like saying hallelujah, hallelujah. Like, I mean, that's totally my grandmother. So it was fun. It was just like, wow, it's nice to be able to, and my grandmother just passed, God, it was like, not even 2 months ago. It was not long ago.
And you're talking to her, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I
immediately text my mom and text my sister, and the same little connection with my brother as well, because that's who I really wanted to talk to, was my brother. And so she's like, so like when you, and I've done it several times, so conscious of it now, like during this episode, every time your ear itches you over here or your nose bothers you, like that's your brother messing with you because he knows it irritates you. Yeah. Because that's what you guys would do as kids. Or when the volume goes up suddenly on a song or on the TV, that's him messing with the volume because he knows it irritates you. Wow. I'm like, wow, that's nice.
So, and that like this morning when Suzanne was talking and we were talking about the soul phone, and then the lights started blinking in the corner. The lights were not on; they just came on and off and started blinking, blink over here. And that was Peter, and later we'll say who Peter is, but we won't say that now. That was Peter blinking the light.
Yeah.
A bunch of us picked up who it was that was blinking the light because Suzanne was talking, and was talking in rhythm with her. And Peter does that for Rhonda, who works with Gary.
Yeah.
And so once you open to this, and it all starts happening, you realize this is very, very real stuff. It's just the skeptics who, for some unknown reason, don't want all this to happen. They're scared of something.
Is that another fear-based construct, even on the materialist side? Because I came out of that religious fear-based context, but there's the science context. As no, materiality. This is all there is. That's all. What is the fear about that?
Dean Radin, Dr. Dean Radin says it this way. He says some people want to be totally sure. They want to be comfortable. They want to be absolutely sure. It's a level of confidence. And those people want to know that science knows everything. Well, when we put out the Hubble telescope in 1998 and we began to look into the far reaches of the universe, the astronomers began to tell us that things were speeding up, not slowing down. And gravity said that things are always going to slow down and it's going to speeding up. Well, then there's something else out there, and they call it dark energy. And we've looked at it and we've measured it and we've figured it out that there's 96% of the energy in the universe we have never discerned.
Wow.
The light energy that we see is 4% of the universe. And so here's the materialist saying, well, I know that in the 4% of the universe that we can see, that the 96% we can't see, there couldn't possibly be an afterlife or any consciousness survival or anything like that out there, and the 96% we know nothing about, we're sure of that. Now, how stupid is that? How absolutely ignorant and dumb is that?
Is it the quest for certainty? Is that
it's
what
the
we
quest
want?
for certainty. They want to know. We know terra firma is firm. We know that our feet are solidly on the ground.
This is all there is. This is solid.
And it's solid, and it's not an illusion. But quantum electrodynamics says time and space are both illusions, and we are just in this big universe, and everybody says, well, it's got to be solid. No. What if it's not solid? What if it's a really good idea? It's a great dream that we're having.
So if it's the fear of the unknown, or the fear of the uncertainty, how is this organization going about educating and moving people beyond that fear of the unknown so they can move more into the certainty?
What we do mostly is we explain to people, if the near-death experience people are telling us the truth, and if you can talk to grandma on the other side, then it's pretty obvious that consciousness survives. And if consciousness survives, then what's there to fear about death? It's just moving on to the next chapter. It's just moving on. And once you no longer fear death, how can anybody scare you? The guy says, I'm going to shoot you. Go ahead.
So then that leads me to the question of, so I've always had kind of that description as my soul, but now, like inside of this weekend, I'm getting a whole nother awareness of it's the consciousness, especially talking with the near-death experiences and having those conversations. So if your brain is dead for a period of time and you're dead, but then your consciousness comes back and you're fully aware and present and everything is there, your consciousness had to have lived. So what's the difference between your consciousness and your soul, and how do those conversations?
Well, these are mostly semantics is the only difference. Your consciousness survival is the way I like to say soul. Okay, consciousness survival. And what happens is you survive. Your soul survives. The part that's you survives. All of this, there is no retribution. There's no punishment. We all are going to be there when we get on the other side. Some people, most poltergeists that are, haunting a house somewhere are souls or consciousnesses that have lost their body, but they couldn't possibly be dead because they're still here, right? So how could I be dead? Because dead is dead, right? So I'm still here. So they're a little confused. And so they don't know how to move on and go on over there. So they're running around and bothering the people that now live in their house. And when we sit down and talk with them and point out, you see us here, but you notice these people are living in your house. I wonder why that is. Is it because your relatives, after you died, sold it to them? You suppose they're not squatters? And maybe you could move on. And there's a light over there. Go over there. And they move on to the light, and they realize that they're dead. Well, that's maybe the next dimension, the fourth dimension, or the fifth dimension. Or we don't know. We can speculate all kinds of dimensions here and things like that, and people do a lot of speculation, and I hate that. But I have to describe it some way. So maybe they move to the fifth dimension. When they're in that fourth dimension, they finally realize, oh, I'm dead, I can move on up. And so that's how you literally do an exorcism to get somebody out of a house. You just get them to move on. And your soul survives. That we know. We think our speculation is that we were here from eternity and we're going to be here till eternity's over. I know this. I went to the other side, I was still alive. I can talk to people on the other side that are still alive. People say to me, but wait a minute, if grandma's over there and she reincarnates and comes back before I die, will grandma still be there? And one of the things we love to say is this is an aspect of consciousness, and the aspect of consciousness that is grandma will be right there when you get there and she'll be loving you, but another aspect of grandma may have gone off and become somebody else again. So if you can see us all as aspects of consciousness, little pieces of the big consciousness, we're each a grain of sand on a beach, and the whole big beach is God, the big consciousness, and we're all part of that.
It's so coming together, like the whole picture.
It all
of
comes
how
together, it does.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah. So then you've got love, you've got consciousness, and you've got so you're saying soul and consciousness are kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
So then you've got love and consciousness.
They're all the one big thing.
Can you measure consciousness like you can measure love?
Okay, so
as far as like an energy,
Doctors Neppy and Close will be talking on Sunday. Have a whole program for putting consciousness into our current system. So they have even measurements, and they have a whole calculus of doing it, how you can figure out how much consciousness is in each atom and so forth. They've got a way to put it in there. This has taken a lot of work and a lot of speculation, and then checking and then redoing to come up with this beautiful theory that they have. And it's not a proven theory yet, but it's very good about putting consciousness into the atom. Okay, but remember, consciousness exists outside of 3D plus time. So we're working on both sides of a divide that does this. And we're trying to do all the science of that. And it's very deep science, and it's hard to fathom. But you as a person, the easiest way is to see that we're all one. Okay?
Yeah.
We're separate right now. David and I are separate, right? Except we're not. Okay, so if I read David's mind, I'm not doing ESP, I'm reading my own mind.
Wow.
There is no distance. If you can go to the physics position that space and dimension are illusions, and time is an illusion, then I can read his mind in the future, and I can read his mind in the past.
Yeah. How accurate would that be, though?
Well, that's a question. If I'm totally open, I may be able to read whatever he's doing. When I work with a spirit on the other side, I'm reading his mind. He's putting his mind into Helen's mind, who's putting it into my mind so that I can give it to you. Okay, there's 4 people involved. But if you, me, Helen, and your grandfather or whatever, there's 4 of us. If anyone doesn't believe this, it won't work. Okay, so Helen and I believe it, and hopefully you believe it. And if your grandfather says, I don't want to talk to him, I don't believe this.
Was that just because he's new to the whole concept, or just still stuck in those religious ways?
I wish I could answer all those questions. What it appears to us is that people go to that side and they congregate with other people who think like that. So I've
heard that, yeah.
Yeah, you got the bad guys sitting in this corner,
but if it's all
robbing
love,
each other.
Why would they be doing that?
Because that's their consciousness level.
There's still levels of consciousness.
They're over there, abusing each other.
Yeah.
And you got the Baptists sitting over here, and you got the Jews sitting over there, and you got the Muslims sitting over there. Okay? Because they haven't progressed beyond where they are. They've
so it's
just
really
died.
no different here or there.
Well, it is.
I heard one near-death experiencer explain that he went to heaven, and he saw the Christian heaven, he saw the Buddhist heaven, he saw the Muslim heaven, and he said the most boring one of all of them was the Christian heaven. And he just kept going, come on, you guys, there's a lot more than just, they were just in this heavenly place, just sitting around singing. That's all they were doing. He's like, there's so much more.
Yeah, so it's sort of like what you expect is what you get,
Yeah.
And in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's some descriptions of some people that are just standing there, just like this, just waiting. I don't know what they're about. Eunice Smith, a medium who's 86 years old, lives in San Francisco and had a near-death experience, and she told me when she was there, she was walking across a catwalk above all these people who were down there, and she said, "What about all those people that are just standing down there? What the Catholics would have called limbo or something, purgatory." And the person leading them said, "Oh no, don't talk to them. If they ever think about somebody else, an angel will come start ministering to them. But as long as they're thinking about themselves, they're just going to stand there." As soon as they think about somebody else.
Yeah.
Another story that came back, and these stories, you have to look at all these stories and realize they're people trying to talk about something that's totally ineffable. They can't describe it. The story comes back that this Anglican nun who died in 1967, and the lady brought her stuff back and wrote a book. And in the book, they had this SS officer who had finally apparently made the thought about somebody else and had been brought in, and they had him, he was kind of like a blob sitting on this bed that they had, and attached to him was a Jewish woman. And she hated him because he killed her husband and her children. But this was 20 years after the war was over, and there's no time on that side, but this is 20 years later. This guy's finally gotten to the position but this person hating him is attached to him, has spent the same time in purgatory or whatever you want to call it, or wherever they were. And I don't want to go there and give these places names, but that was the story. And it's like that. If you hate somebody and attach to them, you're going to be right there in the same punishment or whatever.
Right, sure.
It's not really punishment. It's not punishment. It's when do they move on?
Yeah.
When do they expand their mind? When do they stop being fear-based and start saying, "Hey, I'm going to open to this"?
That's where the consciousness of being afraid or being open comes into play. And what's really interesting about that is the heaven-hell paradigm that we were given. Those are states of mind. Those are states of consciousness.
States of mind.
So they do. Does hell exist? It does. You create it.
You create your own hell.
Right here on earth.
Because I've heard near-death experiencers, and they go, "I was burning in hell. It's real. The devil's real." Yeah, because that's what you believe. It's your core value. Of course, you're going to have a near-death experience, and you're going to. That's
what dreams may come with Robin Williams and Cuba Jr. In that movie, and he goes to see the woman that he was involved with, and she's down in this hell on the other side.
It's in my mind.
Yeah. That's a beautiful description.
Stepping on the skulls to get over to her.
Yeah, stepping on the skulls to get over to her, because that's what she thought, and that's what she saw, and that's what she had. And you never hit where he went. The flowers were blooming, and everything was beautiful, and he couldn't bring her with him.
Hers. So I'd like to talk a little bit about dimensions.
Okay.
So I've heard a lot about that over the years. And at first, you just kind of hear dimensions or whatever, and then as I've been narrowing down, especially on the show over the last 8 or 9 months, been talking a lot more about dimensions. Can you just say a little bit about the different dimensions? Because we talked a little bit about it earlier, even like how maybe they were in the 4th or 5th dimension.
In the ancient history, or if you want to use the Kabbalah or whatever you want to use, we have 7 levels of heaven with Ein Sof, or God, above that would be the 8th level. Okay, string theory and quantum theory gives you 8 more dimensions.
Beyond the 8 levels of heaven?
Beyond our 3D.
Okay.
11 dimensions.
Okay, gotcha.
But there's 8 more, and that 8 matches that same number of 7 levels plus Ein Sof. Okay, so you look at this and you say, well, there must be something to all of that. And if you do the Kabbalah and you work through it, you get the same thing. It's this level. Or if you talk to Nepi and Close, we have a 9-dimensional system, and so how many exactly? I don't know. And people come back, oh yeah, they're on the 7th level, or they're on this level, and okay, where'd you get that? I don't know that.
That sounds ego-based to me.
Yeah, and so there are levels.
Coming up, Dr. Hugenot talks about locality and dimensions on the Turning Stone Show.
The McLean Meditation Institute is a center here in Sedona, Arizona. Pilgrims and spiritual seekers from all over the world come here. I've created this center so they can have a real experience of meditation, whether they're here for an afternoon, or they're here for a week, or they want to come to a retreat. So here at the center, we have a beautiful gift store. We have a lot of contemplative artists and books, and a nice meditation center where you can sit down and meditate or join one of our programs.
Hi, I'm Martin Baratella. I've written 4 books. Every one of the books is titled Field of Love from an experience that I had a number of years ago. This one right here, which is called Field of Love, How to Experience the Field, is a book of some of my most intense experiences. The Kindle version of this book is free, so I just say go on to Amazon if you like that book. This big book is my memoir. The unfoldment of consciousness can look like when you don't censor it at all.
Turning Stone Show. Spiritual consciousness evolving.
And remember, non-locality, there is no location.
Yeah.
But we think in locations. So we
what
try
I
to
was just about
describe
to
it.
ask is, like, could I be doing something else right now in another dimension, in another location?
Well, that one we're not quite sure of. We have people who, I'll put it this way, the best way to look at it is, you know how to use the cloud. Okay, for you, you've got a cell phone, you've got an iPad, you've got a computer, and you can bring a document from the cloud and put it in any one of them, and it works fine in any one of them. And if you think about it that way, our consciousness is in the cloud, and we could have our consciousness here in this body called our little cell phone, this body, and that's where it is. And it sure seems like it's here, but we can always put it back up in the cloud and have it come down in the other one over there.
Grab it on the other side.
How separate are we? Am I having more than one experience, or are we all one mind and I'm you and you and you?
Yeah, because I mean, who has a conscious memory then, a conscious memory of doing something else in another dimension from our conscious point of view?
Okay, at the University of Virginia, they study children who remember prior lives. And one of the interesting things about all those reincarnated children who remember prior lives is 85% of them had a traumatic death. And then they remember that traumatic death and they come back again. Are we individuals? Or are they the same people? Or are they just having a memory that someone else had? Where does that, we don't know. We're trying to find that out. What we do know is this. Near-death experiencers are having all the same experience, no matter what culture they're in, no matter where they are. They have these things that happen. We know that's real. I've been there myself and done that, so I know what that's like. And we have people who are individuals talking back to us from the other side. Now, what does that mean totally? That's hard to understand. I think there are levels. I think there are more dimensions. I think that the string theory is not too far from the truth. I think that the Kabbalah was trying to tell us this. Yeah. Everything that we have.
There's ancient wisdom that
ancient wisdom matches our modern science.
Yeah. Because you've seen, like, sometimes in shows where it'll depict, like, actually, like, physically being able to step into another dimension or go into another dimension or something like that. So I think when people think, I know for myself a lot of times, well, that's how I'm thinking that I'm going to experience being in another dimension or something. How does that, like, how does that actually happen?
Basically, I don't remember going to the light. I just went.
And you would say that would be another dimension then?
Yeah, it's another dimension. I'm over there with the light outside of physics. And when I came back, I came down through flames into my body. P.H.M. Atwater says she came through sparklers into her body. A number of physicists have said, Alan, the flames and the sparklers is your additional consciousnness annihilating as you come back into 3D.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So Thoth Hermes, 6,000 years ago, said the soul is encased in flames. So obviously saw the same thing that P.H.M. Atwater and I are seeing coming back into the body. Most people in their near-death experience will say at the end, suddenly I was back in my body. Well, mine's kind of opposite. Suddenly I was out of my body, and when I came back in, it was wham down through the flames into this visceral, look, I'm back in this thing. Very, very real for me, the re-entry.
Because in this dimension, we wouldn't be able to handle what
all
consciously,
of
all of
that stuff.
Okay. What would happen?
Well, we'd be some kind of a intelligent guru of some sort. You know what I mean? Maybe just.
In closing, give us some context for the ASCS. Tell us about the organization and why people need to be members of it.
The Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies is the single organization within this genre that wants to encompass the whole thing. I've been in the the International Association for Near-Death Studies, they want to study near-death. You go to the University of Virginia, they want to study children who remember past lives. You go to the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, they want to look at all the funny things that you can mind over matter. But the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies wants to encompass the whole thing of consciousness and spirituality as one big, huge thing. So yes, we do have people who come in and they want to work with aromatherapy. There's nothing wrong with aromatherapy. There might be something there. It looks to me as a scientist as, well, that's pretty good. You're smelling the flowers, but hey, there's something there. And so we go to these fringe areas and we go ahead and use that stuff, because here's what we've learned as scientists. Nothing new is going to be learned doing incremental science in the corner, doing in the chemistry lab somewhere. You're only going to learn new things reaching over the edge, beyond what we know, in the fringe, and pulling up something and say, oh, look at this. And over there in the fringe, oh, look at that. So we embrace the fringe. And people say, you guys are a little weird. Yes, we embrace the fringe, because in the fringe is where this stuff is. And if we can't embrace the fringe, there was a time when the near-death experience was the fringe. It was totally delusional. Mediumship is the fringe. So I go into, as a scientist, to study mediumship and find out it's absolutely real. And I can do that. Anybody can do that. Anyone who will open their intuition can do that. And this is what we're doing. And this is why, if you're interested in expanding and going into those areas, then this is the organization to do that with.
That was a question I meant to ask earlier when you were talking about mediumship and is like the study of mediumship. Is how would someone go about doing that?
Well, if you want to study mediumship, you should first maybe take a weekend seminar course with some medium somewhere. That's a good way to start. And if you like what you're doing, then I would suggest that you take a course at Arthur Findlay College, halfway between London and Cambridge, in Stansted, England, in Essex. And it'll cost a bit to get there, but it's very cheap once you're there. It's about, right now, for a week, with room, board, and tuition, everything is $540 American.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, everything's covered. And that's pretty cheap. London, a room for the night is $600. Okay, so we're talking the whole week, and you're there. And Arthur Findlay College, they will raise your awareness of how to be an evidential medium. They're only interested in you doing mediumship with evidence. Name, rank, serial number, everything. You're gonna tell them the whole, this is how they died, this is what color your grandma's hair was when she's a young girl. She wore it in this kind of hairstyle. This is who she was. I've got your grandma here. You know it's your grandma. She has blue eyes, This is your grandma. And they want that kind of evidence, and they teach you how to get it. And then they stretch you. They really push you, and it's a wonderful school. It's some of the most grueling work I've ever done to study there. But
what do you mean by grueling work that you've ever done?
Okay, so
you've done a lot of work.
I'm standing there, and Simone is over here, and I bring through the grandfather of this girl in the back of the room. And I say, I've got your grandfather here. He works in a shipyard in Glasgow. And then, because I'm a naval architect, my mind says, whoops, my conscious mind says, my analytical mind says, no, you're making this up, Alan. But I don't say a word about it. And Simone over here, who's reading my mind and reading the one I'm working with, she says, Alan, it's quite all right. He worked in the shipyard. Of course he's coming to you and not the nurse in the other corner of the room here. He's going to come through you. Awesome. So I say, oh, okay. Well, he's wearing a three-piece suit. He must have worked in administration, and he's in the supply department, and his name is Frederick, and he lived in a house, and the house had a room around it like this that was the stairs went around the room, and Simone says, that's great. What street's it on, Alan, in Glasgow? It's on Oak Street. Yep, that's right. Thank you. And that's what they do to you. And you're standing in front of, everyone in the, they're all mediums who are advanced, that know what they're doing. And you're up there, you think you're doing real good. You got the grandpa's name, you got he liked to smoke a pipe, you got all this stuff, what street is it on? And that's what they do to you. But he can tell you the street. You have to trust Spirit. He can tell you the street and the cross street and the address.
Telling you guys right now, I'm signing up for that.
Yeah.
It's like I've been inspired all day since I heard that.
That's
song.
good.
I was like, oh, I never really thought about like how I would, because I'm very intuitive already. I'm pretty psychic, and I've been asking actually for the last several months. Is moving into next year, I really want to heighten my gifts, and I was looking for some direction for what that would look like.
Arthur Finley College.
And today, and that
50 years of college.
It's exciting.
50 years of college teaching mediumship. And it's wonderful fun. You live in this beautiful Edwardian mansion, and it's Hogwarts Academy.
Yeah,
okay? It's
well,
Hogwarts.
with kind of the work that I do, I think would really add into working with people a lot and just adding a whole new level.
Absolutely. Okay, here, and let me talk about reincarnation for a second. People say, "Oh, we love the near-death experience because it proves the afterlife, but we don't believe in reincarnation." And I like to say, "Oh, excuse me, wait a second. I left my body, went to the other side, and I saw the light, and then I reincarnated back into this body. So if you don't believe in reincarnation, you don't believe in the near-death experience." Hello? Right. So these children remember past lives, and they always, 85% of them have a traumatic death, which means their life was cut off short. Yeah. So they had to come back and do some more. Do we all reincarnate every time? I don't know. Do you know? We don't know. But it's obvious some people do. Okay, I think we may reincarnate. I would like to think that, but I don't know the data on that one. So, but it's obvious I reincarnated back into this body. I remember coming back in. Yeah. It was painful. I didn't like it. Didn't want to come back in. So, but obviously, if God is God, I don't care what religion you're in, if God is God, He can do whatever He wants. So if He wants us to reincarnate, we reincarnate. If He doesn't want us to, we don't. I don't think of the universe as He or she or God. I like to use the word the force. May the force be with you, that kind of thing. It's much better for me, or just the conscious universe. But the conscious universe can do what it wants to do. So we don't have to say reincarnation isn't true or otherwise. The majority opinion in the world is that reincarnation is automatic. We automatically reincarnate. That's the majority opinion in the whole world, except for those populations who are descendants of the Roman Empire. I wonder why that is. It's because in 553 AD, the early Christians believed in reincarnation. Origen, the bishop at Alexandria in the year 200 AD, talks all about reincarnation. He's a Christian bishop. But Justinian, the governor, Emperor Justinian, in 553 AD, called a council of the church, the Second Council of Constantinople, the fifth ecumenical council of the church, and said, we got to get rid of this Origen business. So he wanted the anathema against Origen to be passed. And it basically says, we'll shun anybody who believes in reincarnation. All right. But the records of that council do not have that being passed. But Origen, Justinian, after the council, goes out and starts killing everybody that believes in reincarnation and second lifetimes. Because to have a church and keep the thumb on the people, you have to have one chance, one time, and if you don't kiss up to the church, you're going to go to hell and burn forever and all this
conscious
BS.
Eternal torment.
All this BS belief system that they have. And so Justinian and the Pope wouldn't even go to the thing. He says, this is a travesty, what you're doing. I'm not going. No. And he was in Constantinople, but he didn't go to the thing. The Pope refused to go to it. So this is totally a political deal of the governor wanting to use the church to keep the thumb on the people. Justinian did that. So before that, the whole Western world also believed in reincarnation. Now, the Christian church, all the different denominations say, oh, that couldn't possibly be true. Well, go check your history. It is true. And just go check your history. Tell your pastor, if he doesn't want to believe in that he needs to go check his history.
Wow, that's good.
And when this happens, you see, the church loses, what do they sell? Salvation from what?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Conscious eternal torment.
Conscious eternal torment.
You're gonna burn.
And that's what they're selling. And so if everyone has eternal life, which is what we're trying to say, and I say it right here, scientifically, a non-religious afterlife, consciousness survival, that's what we're talking about. A non-religious, scientific consciousness survival in an afterlife. We just took away the church's power. We just took away materialist science's stupidity. And what kind of a world would you have? And what did John Lennon say? Okay, imagine. Mm-hmm. Imagine what we would have.
Imagine.
What kind of a world would we have if there's no longer any boundaries and borders and the other song that they have, all there is love.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's what we're up to.
Yeah, that's great. It's a good place to.
Your work is phenomenal that you're doing here, both personally with your writings and professionally with the organization. You're being of service, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's not me. It's not. That's an ego thing. It is not me. I am here in service of spirit.
Yes, I like that.
Okay? Yeah. I would just as soon be on the other side and stay there.
Yeah.
I'm just here because the light said, Alan, you have to go back.
That's great.
Okay? I would just as soon be over there. Yeah. But I'm here. We're doing this. All of us, Suzanne, me, Gary, we're all doing this for exactly to serve spirit.
Yeah.
I have no other purpose. Yeah. And that's what's going to happen to you if you go to Arthur Finley.
Oh, it's so good.
They're going to say to you, you are here to serve spirit, you have no other purpose. And you'll pick it up.
That's been my
you start out at a basic class and you build up. The one I just described was a very advanced class. That's 4 weeks of it when I could finally get to that class. Mm-hmm. Any other questions you got, that's what we're doing.
That's great.
Awesome.
Turning Stone show is about spiritual consciousness evolving, looking for meaning underneath the surface. Is there one final thing that you'd like to impart to people that is just your burning thing that you want people to know?
It's so simple. You won't be dead when you're dead. You won't be dead.
Yeah.
There is no death. There are no dead. And that's the point I'm trying to get across to everybody. Yeah. You are not going to die. You're going to give up your physical, but you'll still be here.
Yeah.
Now's the time in the show where we like to have a turning stone. And with today's turning stone, we go to Jesse.
The question to practice this week is, what does your consciousness desire to experience in this moment of time that would have it be fulfilled? So today's conversation with Alan and with Dave was so phenomenal. And the assignment we'd like to leave you with this week is go talk to all your loved ones on the other side. Make a whole list, have a conversation with them. What are the questions that you'd like to ask? Ask for information to come to you and sit back and listen and be engaged in that conversation because they're there, they want to have a conversation with you, invite them back into your life. Just because a physical body has died does not mean that relationship is over. Continue it. And all there is love. But remember, this is a show about questions and questioning. It is not a show about answers. Nothing we say here is the truth. It is up to each of us to discover our own truth.
And join us each week on The Turning Stone Show as we continue the journey of conversations.
Subscribe and stay in touch with us, get connected, and join in the conversation.